Carbohydrates and lipids. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are commonly called sugars and starches. They are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbohydrates, the carbo stands for carbon, the hydrate stands for water, are made of equal numbers of carbon atoms and water molecules. Monomers of carbohydrates are called simple sugars or monosaccharides. Saccharide means sugar. Polysaccharides are polymers of carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates. Glucose. Example of a monosaccharide. Glucose, which is C6H12O6, is our blood sugar. Glucose is also a product of photosynthesis and a starting point for cellular respiration. Glucose plays a central role in metabolism of all cells. The functions of glucose include fuel to do work, a quick source of energy, the raw materials for carbon backbones, and it is the monomer from which larger carbohydrates are synthesized. Cellulose. Example of a polysaccharide. In this diagram, each chair-shaped structure is one glucose molecule. The bonding pattern holding them together makes cellulose, the main component of plant cell walls. We cannot digest cellulose. It's our dietary fiber. Grazing animals, however, have symbiotic bacteria that can release glucose molecules from cellulose, providing food for the animal. Polysaccharides. Starch. Glycogen is animals' source of medium-term energy and plants' source of long-term energy. Like cellulose, both are made of thousands of glucose monomers. However, unlike cellulose, our bodies have enzymes that can digest these polysaccharides, so nutritionally they are starches rather than fiber. The plant starch, amylose, is stored in potatoes and rice. Glycogen is animal starch stored in liver and muscles. Lipids. Lipids are similar to carbohydrates in that they are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but in contrast, have very little oxygen. Like hydrocarbons, which contain carbon and hydrogen, lipids are hydrophobic. Because they repel water, nature uses them as barriers. Lipids include fats, waxes, oils, fatty acids. Phospholipids, a derivative, are the main components of the cell membrane. Lipids are also ideal for long-term energy storage because they are packed with carbon-hydrogen bonds. Triglycerides. Simple fat molecules. The building blocks of triglycerides are 3 fatty acids, hence the name triglycerides, and 1 glycerol. Animals store this molecule in adipocytes, which are fat cells. The formation of a glyceride has the 3 glycerols plus the 3 fatty acids, undergoes dehydration synthesis, so 3 water molecules are removed, and we have 1 complete triglyceride molecule. Saturated and unsaturated fatty acids. Fatty acids are a component of triglycerides with hydrocarbon chains of 16 to 18 carbons. An unsaturated fatty acid has a double bond between 2 carbon atoms, a corresponding loss of 2 hydrogen atoms, and a kink in the hydrocarbon chain. In the saturated fatty acid, as we see here, we just have the carbon and hydrogen atoms bonded together. The little white ones here are the hydrogens. The darker gray ones are the carbons. And we have the acid part at the end. In an unsaturated fatty acid, here we have a double bond between 2 carbon atoms, forming that kink. Saturated versus unsaturated triglycerides. Saturated fats have carbons that are saturated with hydrogen. They tend to be solid at room temperature, like butter. Unsaturated fats have a double bond in their fatty acid chains, fewer hydrogens, and are kinked. They tend to be liquid at room temperature, like oil. Phospholipids. Amphiphilic lipids. A phospholipid is a derivative of a triglyceride. 1 fatty acid has been replaced with a polar, phosphate-containing head. This molecule has a hydrophilic head and 2 hydrophobic tails, making it amphiphilic. Phospholipid structure corresponds to its function as a component of a cell membrane. Phospholipids form cell membranes. Phospholipid structure allows them to form lipid bilayers, the main component of cell membranes. Membrane interiors are a double layer of hydrophobic fatty acid tails, so they act as barriers. Membrane hydrophilic heads face the watery interior and exterior of the cell. Lipid hormones and other steroids. Steroids have a variety of functions. Their hydrocarbon backbones form rings. Examples include cholesterol, an important component of cell membranes, male and female sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen, and cortisol, a hormone produced in response to stress. In this diagram, we see estrogen, which in females is primarily produced by the ovaries. Waxes. Waxes are effective hydrophobic coatings formed by many organisms, insects, plants, and humans, to ward off water and prevent dehydration. They often consist of two long fatty acids connected by oxygen-containing groups.